everyone, welcome to Must Read Monday. My name is Dabney. I'm the Young Adult Librarian at the Twin Lakes Library System, and I use they, them pronouns. For today's episode, I am going to be going over our new young adult books, specifically talking about 5 books that I've read recently, and then just kind of giving a very brief look at the other new books that have hit our collection. So starting right off, I'm going to talk about Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power. This is one I just finished today. So I started it last night, finished it today. This is Rory Power's second book. Her first book is Wilder Girls, which I haven't read yet. It's on my to-be-read list. So this one I kind of went into just sort of knowing that the author has a reputation for writing things that are kind of like horror or creepy or whatever, and so I was kind of excited. That's not generally something I read, but I was up to reading something different, and I was not disappointed. This is like a very kind of creepy and unsettling book that just kind of gets under your skin, and I just could hardly stop reading because I wanted to know what was going on. So a lot of the time I feel like you as a reader, along with Margot, the protagonist of the novel, you don't really know like what's happening. There's kind of like this big plot that's not necessarily a mystery, but like a whole lot of secrets, and the whole time I was reading it I was like, when am I gonna know? But so Margot has been growing up, I believe in Nebraska. She's 17, and her whole life it's just been her and her mom, and they have like this pretty contentious relationship. Like they don't really get along, they kind of fight a lot, and Margot's always trying to compile proof and evidence that her mom actually loves her. And her mom has all these kind of weird rules for them to live by that Margot doesn't understand, and whenever she tries to question her mom, like her mom just shuts it all down. Like Margot doesn't know anything about her father or her family, and it's just something like they don't talk about. So Margot unearths some clues to her mom's past and ends up finding her grandmother's telephone number. So she calls her grandmother, gets in touch, and her grandmother invites her to come stay with her. And so Margot secretly leaves home, hitches a ride, gets to the town where her grandma lives, and ends up finding out it's only 3 hours away. So that's kind of shocking. Like when you're reading it, you feel like they must live so far away from their family, but they really don't. So, Margot arrives in town, and things have already kind of been weird in the novel. Like you're already questioning what's going on with her and her family, and the weirdness just kind of explodes from there and does get really creepy. And part of the book is that her grandma has this farm where she grows corn, and I personally find cornfields to be really creepy. I don't think I would go into one. I've watched too many movies, but so you've kind of got this very unnerving vibe throughout the whole book as Margot's gradually peeling away these layers and secrets and finding out more about what's going on, which I would never have predicted what's going on. Took me completely by surprise. So yeah, if you're just looking for something to read that's pretty unique and weird and just creepy, that's my main word for this book, I would say check it out. Very, very cool. My next book is not really related, but it's The Fell of Dark by Caleb Roehrig, and so I've read most of his books. He kind of traditionally writes contemporary YA mysteries, though I think he did recently write a Riverdale book. So this one was definitely a departure for him because it is a fantasy featuring vampires. So in some ways, it kind of reminded me of shows like Teen Wolf and Buffy and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, because the town where this is set is located at like a nexus of ley lines, which are these lines that run through the earth and carry like mystical, magical energy. You should look them up. Anyway, so like this town is at a nexus of ley lines, and it kind of attracts like a lot of supernatural creatures and people who are like into magic. And you know, in the world that this is set, like everyone knows that vampires exist, but there are like more vampires than usual in this town. And our main character is August. He's 16, and you know, he really loves art. He really wants a boyfriend. You know, he has friends, like a few friends, but I kind of got the feeling like, you know, he really wants to get out of this town and like get his life going. But things get weird for him too, because come to find out, he's not just like your normal 16-year-old boy. He's actually like a kind of chosen one figure, and there's like this big prophecy, and he's like kind of the fulfillment of it. And things just kind of get really complicated for him from that point on. There's tons of vampires in this book, tons of people who want to get to August. And so I kind of like that, you know, this book, like there is this very, you know, intense kind of like supernatural plot going on, but at the same time, like August, it just combines really well with like his normal like teenage self and like what he wants, and you know how he's handling being the chosen one, which I feel like his reaction would kind of be like most of ours. And I like him as a character. He's like kind of awkward and geeky and funny, and he doesn't really have a filter. Like he's continually just saying things and being like, oh my gosh, like why is this coming out of my mouth? I need to stop talking. And some other things I liked about it, there is some romance. There's kind of like a love triangle in here, and when I was reading this, I kept thinking like, this is the book I really, really wanted like 10 years ago, when I was like super into vampire books. Like all I wanted was this book, so I'm really glad it exists now. Yeah, I'm one of those people who I never really grew out of my vampire phase. Like I'm always down to read about vampires. So yeah, this was like enjoyable. And there's also like these kind of flashback chapters that feature like some pretty famous people in history. So that was cool to read about and see how like all these storylines like mesh together. So yeah, I recommend. Then kind of related, but not really, The Extraordinaries by T.J. Klune. This is his first YA book, and it is the first of a series. I'm very excited about that. So I read a lot of his adult books, and I was really happy that a lot of him as a writer kind of, you know, transferred really easily into YA. So there's a lot of the same humor and heart that I find in his other books. So the main character of this is Nick Bell. So he lives in Nova City, and he is very much obsessed with the local superheroes. So in this book, superheroes are known as Extraordinaries, and he has like a huge crush on I think it's Shadow Star, and you know, he's actually writing a fan fiction that's like a self-insert real person fan fiction, where it's just kind of like his ideal romance with this superhero. And Shadowstar's nemesis is Pyrostorm, who also shows up in the fic, and wouldn't you know that Nick Bell ends up kind of tangled up in the world of like his hero and this villain, because of course that's what happens. I really enjoyed it. Nick is like a really fun, sweet character to read. He's just really like humorous, and of course, like I really identify with like sort of the geeky side, the nerd side who like writes fan fiction. I'm like, yes, absolutely, I can relate. And he has like a really amazing friend group that I enjoyed reading about, like all of them. And he's got like a little bit more about him. Like his dad is a police officer. His mom was killed like I think 3 years ago. So those are all big like impacts on him. And so like his dad is very much a part of his life in this book, as you will see if you read it. And also he has ADHD. That is also kind of like a big theme in this book, is like mental health. So yeah, it just there's like some twists and turns. There's some things I was like, I can see where this is going, and then like it was kind of upended. I was like, I didn't see that twist. So yeah, it was really fun, and I think definitely a great new book. Anyways, I'm rambling, losing the thread. My next book I actually listened to on Hoopla, so pull that up. The Voting Booth by Brandy Colbert. So we have the print book in our collection, but it's checked out right now. And I am like a big fan of her books. She writes like contemporary YA, and The Voting Booth is set on like November 3rd, so Election Day. And the two main characters are, 18. They're very excited to be able to vote in like this important election. And I just listened to this and I'm already like, what are the characters' names? So Duke and Marva, they actually have like the same polling place because they live in the same neighborhood, but they've never met each other. Marva, she's like super politically active, and she's been really involved with like preparing for the election. So she gets there like one of the first people in line. She votes, and then when she comes out, she notices that Duke, this guy she had seen in line, like he's still held up, and the people who work at the poll are kind of asking him these questions, and finds out like this is not the place he should be voting. He should be voting over where like his dad's address is. And so because of other things that are happening, Marva ends up volunteering to take Duke to this other polling location to get him to vote. And so this book just follows them throughout the course of this day. They go from being like complete strangers to being very close, which I'm not going to say too much about, but I really loved like a lot of the conversations they have. At times it's very like intense and heavy, and like really important topics are being discussed, but at the same time they kind of will like have moments of just like really lighthearted teen joy. And they're both very different characters. So Marva, she's pretty like intense, sort of like the straight A student type, and then Duke is more like he's a good student too, and he's in a band, and kind of has like a different like life and friend group than Marva. So like that comes up because talking about like how she goes to like a kind of like rich private school with like predominantly like white classmates, and like she's dating a white guy, and then Duke goes to the public school, and he's talking about like his family moved there after his brother died, and like his mom is white, and so he kind of talks about how things are for him being like biracial. And so like those are just some topics that come up a lot in the book, as well as them talking about like some of the inequalities in the voting process and like voter suppression. So many things are brought up and handled, like, I felt really well. So it's a short, like, when I listen to the book, it's about 6 hours, so it's short and like really fast paced. And even though like it revolves around voting, it's like about so much else. And I don't know, I just felt like everyone should read it, and it left me like feeling good and feeling hopeful. And then my final book is This Is My America by Kim Johnson. This is another book that I listened to, and I want to say this book is about 9 hours long on audio, and I listened to it. Yeah, I almost could not stop listening to it. It's like very difficult to put down. I said, like, it's kind of in the same sort of vein as The Hate You Give, but in this book, Tracy, like, her father is on death row for murder, and so he's only got like, I think, 200 and some days left, and she's been, writing all these letters to this nonprofit called Innocent X, like trying to get their attention and get them to take her father's case, because her father's innocent. When the murder happened, like, he was at home with her family, but the police department, just kind of like, she just has all these suspicions that, like, the police department didn't handle things right, like, there's all these problems with the case, and her father's wrongfully convicted, but like no one will listen to her or her family. So she's obviously very passionate about this and about social justice issues. She works at the school newspaper, and she writes like a column on social justice. And her brother, who is a senior, he's like a really well-known athlete. He gets on this talk show, and it's like his moment to shine. But, Tracy's like, okay, I'm going to use this moment to talk about my dad. This is like what is important right now. And so things just start off like really fast-paced, and they just keep going through this book with things that happen. And I don't think this is necessarily a spoiler, but her brother, he ends up also being accused of a murder. And so obviously his family is very traumatized with like what happened with his dad. So he's on the run, and Tracy is left trying to figure out like what happened. Like, no one is listening to the family again. They're just like, okay, he's guilty because he ran, and they're not really, like, the police are not looking into the case anymore. They feel like it's open and shut, even though there's not really, evidence to actually like convict her brother. So she starts investigating things and finding out more about the girl who was murdered, and lots of dark secrets in their town, like things that have happened in the past that have been kind of covered up. So it was, like I said, it was very fast paced. My blood pressure was up because I was like, this is things that happen in our world right now, and it just makes you like, get really passionate about this. So there is, I'd say, like, definitely a mystery element to it, and I liked the investigative side of it with Tracy and like her friends trying to find evidence to help her brother, while at the same time trying to help her dad, and then, kind of like tensions within her friend groups, and within the school as well, in the town, just kind of like, it was just, there's so much that happens. It's very, very, very good. I highly, highly recommend this one. So those are the books I read, and we're at 19 minutes, so I'm going to go very quickly over the rest of these, just to kind of highlight that we have new sequels out. Book 2, Book 4, how night. Another book 2. Unravel the Dusk, book 2. This is the end of this duology. The Crow Rider, book 2. Another James Patterson, Maximum Ride, book 10. This is the first book of a new series, The Stepping Off Place. 10 Things I Hate About Pinky. This is like book 3 of Dimple and Rishi, but I think all of these are kind of standalone, so you don't have to read the first 2 to read this one, but you can. Then we've got Faith Taking Flight. So we're getting into our standalones now, but this one I'll just say is like a novelization of the graphic novel series, which we have. Well, not necessarily a novelization. It's like based on those. So, More Than Maybe. Another election book to read, Running. The Friend Scheme. And now, briefly, a couple graphic novels. A Thief Among Trees. So if you read An Ember in the Ashes, this is a graphic novel set within that world. The Montague Twins. And then our manga, which of course I've read already. We've got Hori Miha, Volume 14. Haikyuu, Volume 39. And then Seraph of the Inn, Volume 19. And I think there was a couple books as well that are already checked out. So I can't remember all of them, but I know Cinderella Is Not Dead is one of those. So those are our new books. You can place them on hold, check them out at our drive-thru. So yeah, I hope you all are having a good Labor Day, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Bye.